And welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone, to a very snowy one. We've got our core stalwarts that I don't know, maybe you're like me, you just let the shoveling take care of itself after Coffee with a Purpose. I haven't shoveled a single flake yet, but in any event, this morning we're happy to have with us Mark Manasas from Lexington, and specifically from a group working with the Lexington Lyceum. And we're interested to hear all about what lyceums are and what he's doing with the one in Lexington. And as I was just saying to Mark, for his benefit, let's start with our usual brief introductions. I'm interested to know if you guys have heard the term. Maybe you all have, and it's just a measure of my own ignorance. But Bill, let's start with you.
Hi, Mark. Welcome.
Morning.
I'm active in a couple of different things. Community Preservation Committee in
Hmm.
Natick. I am active in the summer with some trail stewardship work, and I'm active in the church. And I'm have no idea what Lyceum is, so I'm here to learn.
Okay.
Welcome.
Great. Martin's,
Uh,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, Martin Kessel, a longtime town meeting member, chair of the Open Space Committee. I've had a bunch of ill health recently, so I haven't been here for at least a month, I think. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
I've heard the word Lyceum in connection with the Emerson era, but I can't recall exactly why or how. So I
Yeah.
sort of think of it as a 19th century institution, maybe rightly or wrongly.
You're dead on.
Good. Jianqi.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jean Molnár. I'm originally from Hungary, and I have some idea about the Lyceum. We call it Lyceum, which is a kind of educational center and mostly for young people, but I think it's very open. So I'm really wondering what the Lyceum means here in America and what we can learn from this. Thank you for coming for the today discussion. Thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Thank you. Tom.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Mark. I'm Tom Daly. Been a Natick resident for about 35 years. I'm active with the local uh, charity called Spark Kindness. And I believe a Lyceum public lectures, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds good. We'll learn more. Brinley.
Good morning. I'm Brinley. I've lived in Natick for 25-ish years now. Two kids, one in college, one in the Natick public schools. I'm a town meeting member, part of Eco Natick. I'm kind of a nosy body around town. I just try to stay in touch with everything that's happening, but definitely a environmentally concerned individual. And we actually talked a lot about lyceums in college. So I haven't thought about them in a while, but I am familiar. Nice to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, Brinley. Sally.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm let's see if I can get myself here.
There
Okay.
we are. Yeah.
Good morning to everybody, and I'm looking forward to our subject this morning on this very snowy day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
I'm Sarah, a retired geologist. It's spent my career doing hazardous waste site assessment and cleanup, and now in retirement, like Bill, I'm on the Community Preservation Committee, active in the same church as he is, and interested in, I'm just a curious person, so looking forward to hearing. I remember as a child hearing about lyceums and hadn't thought about it for a long, long time. My dad was really into local history and he talked about them. So
Cool. Great. And I'm Doug. I kind of convene this group along with Martin when he's feeling up to it, and long time resident in Natick, do most of my volunteer work with the local congregational church. And I did want to mention, so Mark is yet another person that Cindy Bates has brought to us. Cindy hopes to be with us, but the snow didn't scare her away. She went to New Hampshire to clear ski trails this weekend, and so I think she's looking for an internet connection up there. With any luck, may join us partly through the hour. Mark, I will turn it over to you. Feel free to screen share. You can let
Yeah,
us know whether you would like questions as interruptions or whether you want to
I
talk
would
for a bit and then
love,
hold
I
them.
would, yeah, I would love questions. I mean, I'd like to make this as free form as possible.
Great.
And this is going to be a bit of a wild sleigh ride in the celebration of our snowy day today.
Sounds
I've
good.
kind of pulled together a mishmash, and this was actually a great opportunity for me to sort of pull together a lot of different ideas. The Lexington Lyceum has been well, here, let me start my slides and then I'll at least
How do you know Cindy, by the way? Just as
yeah, okay, hang on let me focus on wow, Zoom has a lot different. Okay. How does that look?
it's coming. Uh, there we
There
go.
we go.
Very good.
Okay. Yeah, so Cindy and my wife used to sing together in the Back Bay Chorale or something that like that, I want to say,
Oh, cool.
before I met my wife back in 99.
Hmm.
So Cindy and my wife go ways back, and I think one of my first uh, getaways with my wife in a group was with Cindy Bates. We went to like one of the AMC lodges in Lake Placid or something and did a cross
Oh,
country.
nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so she's been a friend of my wife's for a long time and a friend of ours for a long time.
Cool.
So you all are a lyceum, whether you know, Coffee with a Purpose is a lyceum basically. Uh, Lyceums have meant many things over many years, and you know, as I go through some of the slides here, I think might elaborate on that a little bit. This building that you're seeing here is called the Ellen Stone Building. It was built in 1833 in Lexington. It's right on Mass Ave. I don't know how many of you know Wilson Farms, and I've got two screens going here. So if I look over and does anybody know Wilson Farms in Lexington? Yeah,
Couple do, yeah.
it's right in that area. I mean, it's just across Mass Ave, and this was an early sort of hotbed of liberal ideas and whatnot in Lexington in the 1830s. And I'll talk a little bit about 1830s in a minute, but this building was built by this man, Eli Robbins, in 1833 as a lyceum, which was at its essence a system for the diffusion of useful knowledge. That's what this guy, Josiah Holbrook, envisioned, this network of lyceums across the country. And this was built with that in mind. Upstairs, there's a lecture hall that would hold about 60 people. And Eli Robbins built this and said, hey, you know, I've got 100-ish workers. He was a furrier and had a lot of, he tried vulcanizing rubber at one point. He was sort of you know, a everything man. And he built this as sort of a educational place for his workers.
Hmm.
And somebody said Ralph Waldo Emerson, and in fact, we'll get to that in a minute. But Emerson happened to be a minister in this building for 3 years, so it has another connection to the sort of broader Lyceum movement. Let's see here, what else? Why are my slides not advancing? That's very odd. I'm going to stop for a second here. What's going on? That's working. Okay, well, we'll try it this way then. Okay. Okay, there we go. So the Ellen Stone Building, where is it? You know, I sort of said it's on Mass Ave in Lexington. And it is right next to Fallen Church. Some people may know that area also. It's an octagonal church. And this was also built on Eli Robbins' land. He gave this land to the church. And I'll talk about the sort of 1830, 1833 era in a little bit. And as I said, it was built as a lyceum, and it's one of the earliest and the last remaining intact lyceums. It was flooded in 2007, and unfortunately, it's sat empty ever since. So that's one of the purposes of our organization is we're now a nonprofit, and we are dedicated to reviving this building and the sort of the ideals that the Lyceum movement held. And again, just anybody jump in, I'm all ears and so where are we? Well, Lexington's up here and the stone building's on Mass Ave and so we're both a little bit west of Boston. This is just another shot of the building. We've had some festivals and things. A lot of people, when we say the stone building or as the town has known it, they don't get it. They say stone building. I don't know, but it's the Ellen Stone Building. So we've had to start adding the Ellen term into the name when we refer to the building. Most people actually know it as the East Branch Library. So for a long time, over 100 years, starting in 1892, this was the East Branch of Cary Memorial Library, which is the main library in the town. But it was fantastic in that it saved the building. There was a period in 1944, where it was almost torn down. There in the select board minutes, it's got a demolition permit. It's all kinds of furor around, oh, where can we move it? We need to move it here, there, elsewhere. The Mass Society for Preservation of Antiquities stepped forward and say, we'll pay half of anything it costs to save the building. And then somehow there's no record for a while. All of a sudden it's getting renovated. And 2 years later, it reopens as the renovated East Branch Cary Library. So somehow it got saved and we're not exactly sure how, but we're thankful that it did. But everybody knew it for over 100 years as the library, and sort of the history of the building got lost. And I'll kind of touch on that in a minute. So we've just been working to try to bring attention back to the building, that it exists, what's the past of it, and again, just get it open. It's sitting empty for 17 years now, almost 18 years now.
What is Lex Lux 2025?
Yeah, so Lex Lux was something we did last year, and we did it again this year. And I can, why don't I skip to that? Let me get down here, and I'm giving away all my sort of, but it is a neat.
Well, as long as you come back to that too.
Yeah, maybe that's just a teaser, right? Like you there we go. So this is something we did with a bunch of high school kids. We wanted to bring some attention to the building, and you can see these high school kids, and behind them is the depot building in the center of Lexington. And we had this idea of mapping images and moving images. I don't know if any of you have ever been to, what's the big cemetery in Cambridge that's very historic? Mount Auburn.
Mount Auburn.
Yeah. And they do a illumination thing every year where they, on the chapels and the different things, project these animated things. And that's what these.
It's becoming a form of protest, right? The building projections.
Yeah,
that's another subject, I guess.
Yeah, no, in Boston, you're right. I've seen that like on the old State House and whatnot. So we had let's see how this works here. So yeah, these kids. So this is all projected onto the side of the building.
Oh. Oh.
And let's see if it.
Wow.
So I'll jump ahead a little. and we had hot chocolate and a bonfire, and people came, right, just to kind of, figure out what's going on in this building. And I'll pause it for a second. The great part of it was now here's this whole pool of high school kids, and they were all Asian kids. There's a wide demographic in Lexington, and in fact, my two girls are adopted from China, and that's part of the reason we moved to Lexington was for the demographic. And so we had these uh, Asian kids, Chinese kids primarily, that did this programming. And part of the programming was about Martin Luther King Day. So they learned not just about this building, but also about the Martin Luther King thing. So it was a fantastic sort of, way to educate these kids and bring the high school kids together. And so let me see what I can find, all these different. And unfortunately, this side of the building isn't a great sort of projection area for this type of thing. But some of the latter part of it, like, let's see. I probably am giving away the real high points of this, right? Well, anyways, but you get the sense, and they did have things that worked in time with the geometry of the building. And let's see. Okay, now I'll get back now that you've seen that.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to my slideshow.
The RCN address.
Under here.
Okay.
There we go, slideshow. Okay.
All right.
All right, so that was Lex Lux. So that was kind of skipping to the end. And then, so back to 1833. And again, I kind of threw this together over the last few days, and this is the first time I've kind of gone out of the community. So this is trying to pull together a lot of different ideas from a lot of different, and we've been working on this for about 4 years. So a lot of the community is starting to know this stuff. So this is really useful for me. Like things that don't make sense, I would love to hear, and this will help
We'll give you
evolve.
constructive feedback.
Exactly. So what's going on in 1833? And, in 1833, Massachusetts was the last state to abolish this sort of tax on supporting religious worship. And, it was primarily the Congregational Church on that time. There were 24 states in the Union, and in some or many, and I'm an armchair historian, but if any of this is not 100% accurate, please correct me. But so white men that didn't own land, some were beginning to get the right to vote. And that sort of was creating some concern in society that, well, we have this democracy, you need educated people for democracy. We have all these uneducated people coming into our democracy. What are we going to do? And the Lyceum movement was in part a response to that, and I'll kind of get into that in a minute. So this Lyceum movement is been sweeping the country for a while. It actually started in about 1826, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But it really was kind of a time of optimism. The early 1830s were, Emerson, as we're saying, has come back from Europe. He's stepped down from the pulpit. He's not going to be a minister anymore. He's kind of saying, church isn't the way to God. My relationship with God is a personal one, and I get that through nature, and this is my word, interpretation of his views. I'm sure everybody has, but he's sort of, the landscape is a little bit decimated. The trees of, if you were to look out in Lexington or a lot of the areas around the nation, the very denuded landscapes, the trees have been harvested, and those sort of the Lyceum or Emerson's naturalist movement was actually just that. It was also a step back to nature, to getting back in touch with the environment. And it was really seen as a time of personal and national betterment. So here's this map I stumbled across, and this was published in 1833 by this guy Joseph Churchman, And this was actually something that was pushed to foreigners, like, hey, look, we've got this great country, come, come become part of this new country. And he had this backstory of this eagle that's left the old country where there's oppression, and look, we have this great new country where we can start anew and live up to the ideals of liberty and democracy and all these things. So it was sort of a very optimistic time in the country.
Wow.
So what, this question, what is a lyceum? Well, I think it's whatever you want it to be. As I mentioned, it was started as a Society for Diffusion of Useful Information, and it was modeled after the Mechanics Institutes in Britain. And this guy, Josiah Holbrook, really, there were lyceums prior to 1826, well before 1826. But this guy, Josiah Holbrook, and let me see if I have a picture. Yeah, I have to remember to go back a slide. Josiah Holbrook in 1810 graduated from Yale, and he did random things around Connecticut for a while. And the non landed white men were getting the right to vote, and there was this concern about education. And he saw this as this sort of this split. Well, there's this whole path of society that ends up on the boarding school and the going to the Yales and the Harvards and this sort of thing. Well, what if we had this Lyceum movement that was also aimed at education of the general public? And Lyceums actually invited women to attend in many places, and in some places you even didn't need a man to accompany. You were allowed to go on your own as a woman to the Lyceum. But it was a sort of idea of let's make knowledge for everybody. And it swept the country. There were over 3,500 of these organizations at the peak of the movement. And it really, if you've never heard Lincoln's Lyceum address, you should definitely look it up. There's the Lincoln Presidential Society did a series of YouTube videos on it, and they sort of have an actor portraying Lincoln. And it's a time when abolition was really starting to become a question in the country. And, this is 1833. The Civil War wasn't until 1861 or something. So it's well before the Civil War, but abolition is a big deal. The North, in Lexington, even the Lyceum that was founded in the Stone Building, there was already another Lyceum in Lexington. So in 1829, the first Lyceum was founded in Lexington. And in 1833, this other Lyceum was founded in the Stone Building because the first Lyceum didn't allow the discussion of abolition, was one of the issues. And the people that built this, Eli Robbins, was a staunch abolitionist. And in fact, the whole Lyceum movement was the first place really women were able to speak in public. There's a woman, Lucy Stone. Has anybody come across Lucy Stone or the story of Lucy Stone?
You've heard of it?
The name is familiar. I couldn't tell you specifics, but her name is familiar.
Yeah, so Lucy Stone is she was, I want to say Warren or West Warren or something, a little bit Western Mass, but she was the first woman from Massachusetts to get a college degree. And she was hired by Garrison, William Lloyd Garrison, who was a publisher of the first big sort of abolitionist newspaper at least in Massachusetts. Oh yeah, so we just got a Wikipedia link to Lucy Stone there.
Yeah, Brindley is our
Brindley's our researcher.
resource.
The Liberator, right? Is that his Garrison's?
Yeah, that was it. And he hired Lucy Stone fresh out of college or soon after she graduated from college. And she went around the country speaking out about abolition. And there's a statue of her now in the Boston Common, I want to say, big bronze statue of her. And she went around the country speaking about, speaking in front of men. And this was like she had things thrown at her. There's one story when she's in New York, where she was being sort of harassed by an angry crowd, and she grabbed onto the arm of the sort of leading harasser and said, "I know you're going to help me get out of here safely, right?" And he did. She went to the lead instigator of this situation and turned it around and made him, walk her out of this situation safely. Um, but as she was going around the country speaking out about abolition, um, she also, realized that wait, I'm speaking out against black slavery, but I'm also not allowed many of the freedoms that men are allowed. And she became part of the suffrage movement also. So um, she had issues with tax. She wouldn't pay taxes because it was, taxation without representation, and so she was a big activist in the women's rights movements. And in fact, I think it was Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony and Lucy Stone were sort of all together in the women's rights movement, and they split over the question of slavery. Lucy Stone was it the 14th Amendment that gave the blacks the right to vote? And, that came well in advance of 1920 women's suffrage, right? So Lucy Stone was willing to sort of support the black right to vote even before women got the right to vote, while Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony and some of the other suffragists said, no, let's, stay together and we'll all get there together. So it was kind of a lot of issues on that time. Let's see so we talked about this a little bit, and this is just this concept that it started in Millbury, Mass. And again, this is what I'm calling the American Lyceum movement that was founded by this Josiah Holbrook. He was really the Johnny Appleseed of the Lyceum movement. Everywhere he went, the Lyceum sprung up. And the first one was kind of 1826, and then there was Worcester was a hotbed, Middlesex County, they sprung up all over. And it was really just this idea of coming together and, educated people in the community would talk about subjects they knew about, and there'd be lectures and discussions. And it often meant if you went to a foreign country, you were supposed to come back and tell about your trip and the cultures that you saw and this sort of thing.
Cindy Bates has done that with this group.
Yeah, and not knowing that she was actually part of a lyceum.
Yeah, and so is Martin. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the Lexington has had several lyceums over the years, and the Lexington Lyceum sprang out of a town committee. So in 2022, the town said, all right, we have several empty buildings in town. The Stone Being building is one of them. Let's put together a committee to just, see if they can identify what we can do with these buildings. And as we dug into this building, like I said, everybody knew it as a library. It was the old East Branch Library. But we dug up this whole history of the Lyceum movement that had been a part of this building, and the abolitionists that had spoken in this building. And you'll notice in this sign on the right-hand corner, this hung on the porch of the library for years, but nowhere on this plaque is the mention of any woman, let alone Lucy Stone, who did lecture in this building. We have the newspaper clippings from 1837, I think it was, when she lectured in this building on abolition. But you'll notice in this plaque, which we don't know when the plaque went up, but she's not mentioned on here. But yet, people like Theodore Parker and whatnot are mentioned. Does anybody know Theodore Parker? Does that name ring any bells with anyone?
Is that the one that they named the Parker House after?
It may be. Where is the Parker House?
In Boston.
It very well might be. Theodore Parker is a pretty pretty remarkable guy. He was a minister. He's actually the grandson of Captain John Parker, who, if you've seen the Minuteman statue on the green, they say that it's modeled after Captain John Parker. So he is the grandson of John Parker, and he was a staunch abolitionist, real firebrand abolitionist. And in fact, this is a side story, but I hope you don't mind side stories.
Not at all.
Obama had a rug in the Oval Office that had 5 quotes on it. And one of those quotes is, "The arc of moral justice is long, but it bends towards freedom."
Right.
And everybody thinks of that as a Martin Luther King quote. And it is a Martin Luther King quote, but Martin Luther King attributes it to Theodore Parker. And if you look it up, it is a Theodore Parker quote. So the arc of moral justice is long and it bends towards good, was on Obama's rug. And then there's another quote on Obama's rug that, government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from this earth, or should not perish from this earth. And that's attributed to Abraham Lincoln. Well, Abraham Lincoln was also quoting Theodore Parker. So 2 of these 5 quotes that Obama had on this huge Oval Office rug are actually Theodore Parker quotes that were attributed to other people. So, and Theodore Parker spoke something like 8 languages. In one year, he checked out something like 637 books from Harvard Library. This guy was just, you couldn't control him. He was unbelievable.
Mark,
So he's
just for your awareness, since Ricky joined us a little later and didn't get a chance to do introductions, as you say, that lyceums were provided one of the first places for women's voices to be heard. Ricky is the first woman select board member from Natick from way back. So she's a very important person in Natick's history for women.
that's good. Thank you, Ricky.
Well, my story is, to my mind, it's particularly significant to me because I am a survivor of the Holocaust. And so for me, having been accepted in the town of Natick, and not only been accepted, but elevated to that honor, is a I can't tell you what that means to me personally, because it implies personal acceptance, personal trust, and a feeling of trust implies willingness to give that person an opportunity to lead. And for me, someone who would have been oven fodder in my homeland where I was born, that is an indescribable gift by the people of Natick. And they did it 3 times. So the first time was not a fluke. As I told myself when it happened, I couldn't quite believe it that I had won the first time. But they did it twice more, so that I am unbelievably grateful. And the town of Natick will always be my home. My burial plots are in Natick, even though I no longer live there.
What year was your first election, Ricky?
1975.
1975. Wow, just in time for the
This year
200th.
is my 50th anniversary, and I marched in the parade, the bicentennial parade, in a colonial gown, and it was
Wow.
was wonderful, just wonderful. And I fantasized about marching in this year's parade when I heard that there was a thought of reviving a parade in Natick. And I'm told that the time frame is just too short in order to raise the money and staff the parade and book the acts. But I have asked to be in the Natick Parade Committee, and Deb Saylor said that I could be, and I plan to work in that parade and sponsor a float. If I can book a fife and drum corps in, that's one of my choices. The other choice is a Trinidad steel band because
Oh, neat.
That sounds great, Ricky. Let's get back to his presentation, but so happy to have you with us today. And
thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
That's really neat, Ricky. Thank you for sharing that. You have some similarities with the woman that gave the stone building to, and I haven't mentioned this yet, the woman that gave the stone building to Lexington was a woman by the name of Ellen Stone. And she has no relation to Lucy Stone, although they did correspond with each other, or actually Ellen Stone, there's Ellen Stone Jr. and Ellen Stone Sr. Ellen Stone Sr. corresponded with Lucy Stone. Oh, actually, they both did. When Ellen Stone Sr. died, Lucy Stone and Ellen Stone Jr. communicated with each other because Lucy Stone, the abolitionist, wrote Ellen Stone Jr. how much she admired her mother and thanked her for her mother's support of the abolitionist movement throughout time. And Ellen Stone Jr. is the one that gave this building to the town when, in her will, she deeded what she called Mansion House, or what the family called Mansion House, to the town. And Ellen Stone Jr. in her own right was quite a unique woman, maybe similar to you, Ricky, in that she was the first woman elected to any public office in Lexington. And at that point in time, the only office she could run for was the school committee. So she wasn't allowed to, the first public offices in Massachusetts that women could be elected to was school committee. And so as soon as that was available to her, she ran and won the election to the school committee. So here I found the Concord Library has just finished, like literally a couple of weeks ago, scanning some of the earliest newspapers. They had many of them scanned, but they were really hard to read, and they've just finished it. But here in 1832, I think it was the Middlesex County Lyceum Society, which was a collection of all the different lyceums in Middlesex County, sent out a survey to all the different communities and said, tell us what the statuses of the statuses of any lyceums in your community are. And I don't know, is South Natick still a thing, or is that?
Oh, yes.
That's very much a thing.
Very much a thing. Yep.
So at least
it's not independent, but it's a defined region of Natick.
Okay. So Natick may just not have responded because they said something, there were like 30 and 16 of them responded, or 28 and 16 responded. But South Natick responded and said, they had one in 1831. And this was roughly how it went in most towns. There would be a weekly or a monthly or something. And for some number of cents, you could, join this lyceum, and there were random lectures and things. I'm going to jump back just to this one. So as I was saying, there were several lyceums in Lexington. There was one in 1829 that didn't allow abolitionist speech. The one in 1833 in this stone building did. And that was the jumping off point for our committee. We said, oh, wow, look, there's this incredible history. And as we dug further and further, we found that our iteration, we're now a 501c3 nonprofit. Our iteration is actually the 6th iteration of a lyceum in Lexington. So they've kind of come and gone over the eras. And in the early days, they were very much about education and schools. So in fact, the public school system, if you read up on the Lyceum movement, there was no standardization for public education in the early 1820s and 1830s. And the Lyceum was really the sort of birth of the public school standardization system. And in fact, Lexington had the first normal school in the country, which was a school to teach teachers. So actually it's interesting now. This for the first time just dawned on me. The stone building sits at one end of Mass Ave on our historic district, and the Masons Lodge sits on the other end of the historic district. And the Mason Lodge is the first normal school in the country where this school for teaching teachers was founded. And let's see. And so where are we today? You know, as this Lexington Lyceum advocates, we are all about bringing this building back to life and sort of the ideals of the Lyceum movement. And has anybody heard of Robert Putnam and Bowling Alone? He wrote the book Bowling Alone. He was
yes. Yeah, that book sort of mourned the demise of the various community groups that people joined as a matter of, just being part of the community. And it talked about individual isolation in the community in such a way that it I don't know quite well, in some ways it was the precursor of the isolation that's happening now with technology.
Exactly.
Everyone is focused in on their phone instead of the person next to them, and technology has isolated and it's gotten to an almost pathological stage with young people. And I think this sounded like the beginnings of it.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, Robert Putnam used to live in Lexington, and but the idea of, like you said, bridging social capital. He sort of publicized this whole idea of social capital in third spaces. Like you have maybe your workplace is your first place, maybe your church is your second place, and then what's your third place? Like those are sort of like-minded people. Like at your office, you're working towards the same thing. At your church, you have the same sort of belief system. What's your third space where you might overlap, like a coffee shop or a theater, or these where you might. Pat, do you have a comment?
Yeah. And just to identify, Pat is the original founder of Coffee with Purpose, formerly known as Coffee with Pat. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, Mark, I have a question for you. I noticed that in Framingham too, there's a very old building called the Framingham Lyceum. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I have a list of something like 175 lyceums that have over time. So yeah. I'm really curious, and maybe as at the end, this is the 200th anniversary. 2026 is the 200th anniversary of the American Lyceum movement, and I say that as this sort of this one that started with Josiah Holbrook. As I said earlier, there were dozens of lyceums prior to the 1826 founding of Millbury Branch 1 of the American Lyceum movement. But there are definitely a lot of them out there, and some are in better states of repair than others.
And Framingham also had a normal school.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the beginning of what's now Framingham University.
I think so.
Oh, right.
I think
Framingham State. Yeah, maybe.
It used to be Framingham Teachers College.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my mother was at Lowell Teachers College that became Lowell Tech,
UMass Lowell,
something along those lines. But yeah, so the Lyceum movement has morphed over time, but I'm a member of a number of nonprofits in town, and we all come together randomly every now and then, not very frequently. And the whatever 10, 12 different organizations that are represented, we all go around the table and we go, and we're all about building community, and we're all about building community. And we realize we build community within our silos, right? We kind of like, there's little overlap at the fringes. But the idea that we just submitted a proposal to the town of Lexington for the beginning of December to revive this building is this concept of making this building about that bridging social capital. Like, how do we bring these different organizations that kind of work together on the fringes? We co-support each other's festivals and things, but if you look at the attendance, it's primarily the members of those organizations. So the idea behind this building is more along the lines of how do we bring these organizations together to educate each other about our different cultures, but also to take part in the celebrations of those other cultures. And this even goes back to I said this building was donated to the town in 1892. Well, in 1893, at the dedication of the building, A. Bradford Smith, the president of the Lexington Historical Society, is looking back on this Lyceum movement, right? That was 1833 or 1826, depending on what you want to say. Great, here's this thing again. We can bring all the different sects and cultures and areas of our community together in this place to spread the knowledge that we have and share our cultures together. So there's always been this idea in the Lyceum movement of sort of freedom of speech and sharing and openness and whatnot.
Isn't the planetarium in the stone building?
A planetarium?
Yeah, isn't there in the stone building, the big one?
I'm not familiar.
In Lexington? I thought it,
Must be some other building.
well, maybe the Stone family gave it to another, not the town.
You may be thinking of, there was an observatory tower.
Yes, yes.
That the Robbins family, which was sort of the Robbins family married into the Stone family, and they sort of merged together.
Well, I knew it as the stone building.
Yeah, interesting. This is the only stone building that I know of, but the Robbins family did build an observatory tower that you could see Boston from the top of it, but it burnt down. The foundation's still in the woods, but the tower burnt down. So this is who we are. There's, I'd say, 15 or 20 of us. We're all volunteer activists. We've got currently an 8-person board. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Many of us are town meeting members. I'm also on the board of Lexington Community Farm, which is actually not a community farm, like people come and grow their own plots, but we have actually 4 year-round farmers and then about 7 or 8 seasonal staff, and we have a small farm stand, and I'm a town meeting member. But it's really this concept of bringing this building back to life as a center for civic engagement in our town and a center for real live interaction with each other. The MBTA zoning has hit Lexington, and I would say for the better. We have about 1,000 new units of housing that are permitted in town now. We're currently about 10,300, 10,500 homes.
You have built that many?
But I don't think that many will get built. That's a big point of discussion right now. That okay, are we really going to see another 1,000 units built? But as we're adding population, which we're definitely adding, we've actually lost a couple of the community third spaces. We've lost our depot building in the middle of town, which the Historical Society has turned into a bit of a museum. It used to be kind of a function hall, but now it's a museum. And our library, unfortunately, has who we have very good relationships with, and we sort of co-sponsor programs sometime. But they have, because of the 250th in Lexington and the celebrations, they were very worried about freedom of speech stuff and having to give, and this is my interpretation, hate groups the ability to speak, and they are not allowing outside groups to rent space in the library anymore. So you have to partner with those. So there's been a kind of a loss in public spaces in our community center, which does have a cafe room, which will hold about 60 people, the same size as the lecture hall in this building, is always booked. It's months out. So we're trying it. We're saying, look, more people are coming into town. We want to use some community preservation money. We're willing to raise some money. Let's find a way to bring this building back to life.
What is the population of Lexington?
37,000, 38,000, something around there.
About the size. Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you were looking into community preservation funding, because being on the community preservation committee here, it certainly sounds like something that might align with the goals of that program.
Yeah, it does. And as you know, or I'll be curious what the experience is in Natick, right? There's always competition for that money. And in fact, it's a little bit of a controversy now because there's a fire station in Lexington that is, I don't know how old it is, but it's a fire station. We need a fire station, but they're trying to use historic preservation money to restore that, so it's like, wait a minute, is that really, if we had a historic preservation plan, which we're supposed to, where our comprehensive plan said by around this time we should really have a historic preservation plan. If we did have a historic preservation plan, would that really be at the top of the list? But we just approved a $660 million budget override to pay for our high school. So money is tight in Lexington. And even though it's CPA funds, people, even on town meeting, I don't think a lot of people understand CPA funding versus just general.
How long has CPA been approved in existence in Lexington? It's because it's pretty new in Natick.
Yeah, at least 15. We were pretty early in the C. I don't even know when it came around, but and even people in town.
Years old. I remember when the first round, I think it was 2006.
Yeah, I was on that committee.
Right. Yeah, I was asking about Lexington originally, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a challenge. I mean, I get we need to balance a budget, and yet the whole sort of idea behind the CPA is to try to take it out of those discussions every year, to try to peel off this portion of the budget that you sort of say, okay, this is for the saving things, not like we've paid for, recreation, and recreation is part of it, but like AstroTurf on the playing fields, and
can't do that anymore.
Janji, you have a question? Yeah.
Well, actually, I just have a short comment. A couple of weeks ago, talking about Robert Putnam, he was invited by local churches, mostly, churches and synagogues in Framingham, Sudbury, Natick, Wellesley, and others. It was a two parts lecture series. I really enjoyed it. I went to Sudbury. That was one of the church or temple actually hosted this event, and it was the first part was on his film Join or Die, and talking about the social fabric and how to rebuild our society. So it was absolutely fascinating, and it just reminded me, to our little Coffee with Purpose chat, here we have this nice, cozy Monday morning society, and it was wonderful, and just talking about, how important the social connection. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt this discussion, but it was for me, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And he came to the second part, and he was so, he gave such a lovely presentation. He's energizing, waking up our ambitions, to connect and to figure out how to remodel our society, because I think in this technology time, in the area of technology, we have to think about how to adjust and how to do things differently, and to be connected. So yeah, sorry, I just
No,
No,
that's good
I just
input.
wanted to give this comment.
Yeah. And Pat, you comment,
Yeah,
question?
I saw the community events. Now, who organizes all these community events, Mark?
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is one of those. I've been on a number of town committees and things, and you always get to the point like, all right, who's going to start the project plan to do this event, and who's going to get the permit, who's going to do like. This is one of those organizations where we say, all right, and I turn my head and it's done. Like there's just a group of people that are so motivated in this. There's about 6 or 8 of us that just really it feeds on itself, and I don't know if you've ever been a part of an organization where it just feels so like the purpose is so real and it's so positive. And for somebody of you that joined late, I was saying how, let me see if I can find this picture again. We got this group of high school kids involved, and they're really the STEAM team, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And they're all Chinese kids, and as I said, my 2 daughters are adopted from China, and we moved to Lexington for the cultural diversity and whatnot. But they put together this whole slideshow about Martin Luther King, and they've done it for the Indian American community since. For Diwali, they put together a whole slide deck for them. So this is kind of the whole ideal that we have for this center is, different groups learning about different cultures and sort of trying to, share what they know and share and just come together over these many different ways. So these are all the sort of different organizations we've worked in. We've actually have a thing on Douglass Day, is the celebration of Frederick Douglass's birthday. And Frederick Douglass was one of the Lyceum movement was actually one of the platforms for the abolitionist movement. And Frederick Douglass actually spoke at a lot of the Lyceums around the country. And we have a thing coming up for Douglass Day to celebrate his birthday. And he actually spoke in the building that we're doing this event with. But we get some of the middle school kids and the high school kids to come in, and they transcribe. This year it's the colored conventions, and they actually take handwritten documents and transcribe them, and it goes to a big database. So they're starting to, and a lot of it's cursive, so it's interesting trying to.
Yeah,
I
well,
for the Historical Society here, I transcribe old documents. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so look up the Douglass Day. You can participate from anywhere. And we just try to get a group of people together in this room where Frederick Douglass was and do this and kind of teach the kids a little bit about Frederick Douglass and a little bit about the town and all this thing. And
Natick reads the Frederick Douglass speech. I think he wrote one for the 4th of July.
yes, what to the slave is the 4th of July.
Right.
And that's read here at the Historic Society. I remember going to one event that was outside and was a wonderful event. And our Historic Society, while it may be it's not as widespread as the events that you have here in Lexington, but it's not a slouch either. They do some very nice things.
That's read every Juneteenth now. Yeah.
Right.
Pat?
Yes, Mark, I had a question for you about the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman. And here in Natick, we have some, a number of old buildings, houses. Some of them have been torn down, but they were actually used during the Underground Railroad, I guess, runaway
Right.
slaves would hide out in homes of wealthy abolitionists and stuff. And I was just curious, Lexington have that kind of thing too?
I don't really know. I'm an armchair historian, and I've really come to appreciate so many of these things. And I knew so little about Frederick Douglass when I started this journey, but that's part of the wonder of it all to me is explained. So I'd love to learn more about what the Underground Railroad was in Lexington. I know there was hopefully some part of it, or must have been some part of it, but I'm not aware of it yet.
Mhm, mhm.
So I'm just going to flip through some of these slides, see what I might have forgot. Oh, well, here's, we did a screening of Robert Putnam's Join or Die, and we were so excited because we got him to give us a quote for our proposal to the town to revive the building. He's one of my good friends, lived next door to him in Lexington, and so we were so excited just to get a quote from him, to say, yes, reviving the Lyceum in Lexington would be wonderful from the birthplace of liberty or something like. I can't remember the quote, but
By the way, you talked about your old fire station.
yeah,
Natick burned down, the wood center of town burned down in 1870, and it was rebuilt, and the fire station had burned down in the fire, and it was rebuilt in brick. And the nonprofit Center for the Arts acquired the central fire station in 1999, no, 2002, I think. And it is now the home of the Center for Arts, which is like, I think, 27 years old and going strong. It's from the Performing Arts Center of Metro West. And it's a wonderful facility that has live performances of all kinds of music, stage performances, and the film, all kinds of films, documentaries, first line movies, and all kinds of film on the second floor. So it's now become a real community resource, and we donate seats to nonprofits, and it's a locus for events that happen there. I'm hoping the Masons, not the Masons, the Rotary might be able to celebrate their 100th anniversary at TCAM. So it's you might consider doing something like that with your fire station.
oh, right, yeah. Well, this one they're trying to keep it in service, actually.
Oh.
But we also just built on the other, not on the other side, but slightly, we spent some huge number of millions of dollars building a new fire station, and we've got a new police station. So people are really concerned about taxes in Lexington, but that's kind of another story. And we're just trying to carve out a little piece of our CPA funding for this building. So, but anyways, so that was right. So I'm just going to fly through and see if anything, and I don't want to. So here's our benefactor, Ellen Stone, young Ellen Stone, and when she deeded it to the town in 1892, it was given to the library, and it was to be all these things. And she was a very smart woman. She said, I can't imagine what it could be in the future, but for the time being, here are some examples. And then her number 7 is anything not inconsistent. So there's kind of a double negative, right? Like not. And I actually forgot to mention, she was also, she was the first woman elected to town committee in Lexington, a public office in Lexington school committee. And she also was in the first graduating class of BU Law School as a woman that allowed women. She didn't graduate as a lawyer, but she did enroll in, she had some health issue and I think she went up to Canada, but she didn't complete it, but she did enroll in the first year of they allowed women. Let's see what else. This is our sort of upstairs lecture hall. This is the state it's in today, right? There's our East Branch Library, when it used to be the East Branch Library, the water damage. but all the trim, the glass in the windows, the fireplaces, the original stuff is there, and it is on the National Historic Register. It really is a beautiful old building. The town meeting did approve $400,000 for a design study on how to revive the building, and they came up with a cost estimate of about 5.6 million. And this is old. It said the town was preparing for an RFP, request for proposals. Well, they did submit our request for proposals, and we have responded since then. So we actually, on January 28th, have a meeting with the town 2 days from now. We were the only people to respond to the request for proposals because they were looking for somebody to lease the building. But because it's owned by the town, they don't know if there's any funding to restore it, that nobody's going to sign a lease for a building that they don't know, when could it ever be ready for occupation. So we were the only group that responded. And we've talked to the select board and town meeting over the years, and we did push forward this 400K approval for the design study. So we do have some traction, but the money is tight. Let me see what else. So maybe just to wrap up, where do we stand now on the building? I've sort of, mentioned where we stand. We're trying to bring this back as sort of a symbolic thing in Lexington, and hopefully for the rest of it, sort of revive what was the Lyceum movement. And just recently, in the last month, we've reached out to the Millbury Historical Society. So this was Millbury Branch 1 of the American Lyceum movement. And there's a guy by the name of Roger Desrosiers who does all sorts of things with Mass Historical. And he was not aware that in November of 1826 was when the Millbury Branch 1 was founded. And so now Millbury is going to they're starting planning for us, celebration in November of 2026. And actually the Gloucester Lyceum reached out to us and said, hey, we see that you're a presence, lexlyceum.org is our website. Your presence in the Lyceum, we've got a lot of history about Lyceums. What are you doing for the 200th? And we said, well, glad you asked, because we're starting to plan for that ourselves. And I've reached out to a woman by the name of Angela Ray, who is in the film that the Lincoln Presidential Society did about Lincoln's Lyceum lecture. And she was asked by the Chautauqua organization. I don't know if anybody's come across that. Yep. So a lot of people would say that the Lyceum movement merged into the Chautauqua movement, by the 1870s or 1880s after the Civil War. It sort of merged into the Chautauqua movement, and she was asked to give a lecture on the 200th anniversary of the Lyceum movement at the last Chautauqua gathering last year. So so we've been talking to her. So there is some interest in reviving this concept of the 200, on the 200th anniversary of the American Lyceum movement. And we're reaching out to, any existing Lyceums, but different historical societies, and really trying to get together just a loose-knit group of people that are interested in this concept of Lyceums and reviving this sort of in-person, face-to-face, via Zoom or whatever, or hybrid idea of bringing people together across cultures.
Yeah, Mark, you mentioned at the very outset, as we were doing introductions, saying, well, whether we, Coffee with a Purpose, know it or not, we're a Lyceum. Has your organization given much thought to, as you were just mentioning, hybrid and or virtual, just given modern technology, whether there's avenues for the kind of goals that a Lyceum serves, but using modern technology and virtual meeting spaces?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, and there are definitely organizations doing that sort of thing. We were initially faced with this question of, well, what do we do with a 60-ish person lecture hall, right? That was one of our first sort of questions, because we're really about trying to bring the building back to life. And we realized we couldn't just say bring the building back to life. we had to give some examples of what we would use the building for. So we came up with this whole idea of community conversations where we get together various, probably have some examples of that in here, but where we would bring people together for discussions of like race in our schools, or what is affordable housing, or I don't really have a good list, but we bring together on all these different topics and then have breakout sessions at the end. So we bring in, some pretty big names and have a sort of a board discussion, and then we break out into groups. And there's some theories out there that if you spend, a half hour, 45 minutes with people discussing things, you can look at them as almost as closely as some of the friends you've known for years, right? Like if you can truly sit with somebody and talk to them about, important subjects. And I have to say, I went away so energized from these things. And I actually participated in a dismantling racism in our town, which was like a 6-week course. It was all online. And I went away from that with some people like I feel so attached to and so close. So I think it can be done in person. We were looking at it in person because we had this facility, but I think it can also be done online too. And I think the key is pushing people out of their comfort zone a little bit. So discussing things which are uncomfortable sort of makes you a little bit vulnerable. You have to, and we've come up, if you look on our website, we've come up with the whole 7, what do we call it? 7 principles for Lyceum conversations about, how to be open and how to let down your guard and how to share. And at the beginning of all our sessions, we reiterate these and
I asked several questions leading up to setting up what you're talking about, the Lyceum. Do you have a group in Lexington called Better Angels?
I don't, it's not in Lexington, but I am aware of the group, and yes, I think the model is
Yeah.
very similar. Yeah.
Great Braver Angels now. Yeah, yeah. I see
Yeah.
Martin's got his hand up. Yeah.
We're talking about collaborations and involving more people. I'm wondering about involving other organizations without necessarily having to build a new building or create a new organization. And we were talking before about South Natick, and there is sort of an epicenter in South Natick of some of the principles that I see here. If you look at the Natick Historical Society, they have some very interesting programming, but they don't have a whole lot of space. Sometimes they do lectures upstairs at the Bacon Free Library, so there's a natural collaboration there. And even Bacon Free Library, I think, tops out at about 20 or 30 people for the audience. So that's kind of crowded. But then you can go across the street to the Elliott Church and have a much larger space. So we could, you could get several different institutions from South Natick collaborating and trying to sort of put something together that rather than starting from scratch here. Is that kind of an approach that other people have used?
Can I say, as far as Lexington is concerned, you still have a functioning League of Women Voters, do you not?
Margaret Copey, I know her well. I served on a committee with her for many years, and she is
I knew, oh my God, she was your moderator.
yes, Deborah Brown.
No,
Town meeting. I'm thinking town meeting moderator.
she was your moderator and selectman, and I served with her. We started the women elected municipal officials of Massachusetts. And she would, oh my God, she would be an incredible force at this time.
Yeah.
And by the way, Gloria Bloom, who's a member of your town meeting, and I guess she was on the tree committee.
Yeah.
And she's a town meeting member of many, many years, and she was an organizer of your in your town meeting. She's someone to reach out to in some of your public space discussions.
Gloria Bloom. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Mark, I don't know whether you had any response to Martin's comment or not, but then I know Pat's got a comment, but yeah.
Yeah, and Martin was about the use of the spaces and
Yeah.
whatnot. And I think every town's got a
Collaboration among different organizations that are already.
yeah, and so what we're doing now is under this loose knit idea of how do we bring attention to the Lyceum movement? Like my ultimate goal and the ultimate goal of our organization is to save this building as a sort of symbolic emblem of the Lyceum movement and what it stood for in this time in America's history that's kind of between the founding of the country and the Civil War that kind of is not really, it's a little hazy. And that so we're really ultimately about saving this building and it's the legacy of that time period. And we're trying to use the anniversary of the 200th 200th anniversary of the Lyceum movement as a means to do that. And we started this loose-knit coalition of communities that has a Lyceum in their past and is maybe willing to, commemorate it in somehow. But that's kind of very early. And I'd invite any of you, if you're interested in that, to let me know. And we have set up a listserv. We're just starting that process of how do we really bring some attention to this movement and celebrate it and what it means.
Great. Yeah, with your permission, Mark, I'll put your email address in
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
follow-up chat. But yeah,
Yeah.
Pat, you have a comment, question?
Mark, yeah, I'm really fascinated by your whole presentation and what you stand for, what you're trying to do. What it seems to parallel a few things that we've been trying to do here at Coffee with Purpose. But the other thing is there are a group of people in Natick, a lot of very positive organizations that sometimes do what you call it? They do get together on projects here and there, town-wide or community.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, and the Lyceum, the thing you had on there, that the ground rules for discussion and
Yeah, 7
Yeah,
principles.
that's a great slide.
yeah, that seemed like a really fascinating, kind of inspiring document. So is that up on your website and everything?
Yeah, I'll put a link to there now. It's yeah, I'll put a link in the chat.
Yeah.
And that came about in large part from one of our new board members, who's actually an old friend and lives not far from me. But he is for the Center for Consensus Building, and he's travels the world basically into literally all these hot spots around the globe where there's conflicts and sits down with the different sides and tries to build consensus. And so he helped us pull this list together.
Yeah, it's really quite good. We're having a number of issues, even here in Natick, we've had, and I think Doug and people who are part of the First Congregational Church have better perspective on it, but there have been incidents of some of their banners being torn down and that kind of thing. The thing you mentioned though about how I'm not sure if you or the select board or they're working on, but they also had to kind of put a firewall there for in terms of free speech, the firewall against hate.
The library, right?
I'm just curious how you how that was done and what kind of approach.
Yeah, that was the woman that runs the library, Corin Stembridge, is amazing. She's been the librarian for a while, and but I think I don't know the inside details because it was very much between probably the library trustees and herself, but they've somehow decided that they don't want the exposure to outside organizations coming in with hate speech. And so I don't know if it will be repealed, when it would be repealed, if it's just because, you know, the 250th is the celebration of the Battle of Lexington was this past year because the Battle of Lexington was 1775. And so we're doing the whole thing last year and through this year is kind of our 250th. And they were really worried about some of these groups coming to Lexington and, you know, and I think proactively they sort of tried to prevent that. I don't have any insights.
Yeah.
That's what I know from the outside.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Well,
can I just say to go back to South Natick and public spaces? Right now, the under the CPA money from dealing with affordable housing, the historic building, the Elliott School, is being repurposed and renovated. And there will be a large public space as part of the renovation that will serve South Natick much more adequately than either the parish hall or the Elliott Church or certainly the Historic Commission or Bacon Free Library. So that will be coming. I don't know when it will be coming online to be used, maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 years from now, but it's something that Natick can look forward to with pleasure and pride.
yeah. We also have another fledgling group trying to save the or restore the ballroom in the upper floors of the Clark
Oh,
building in downtown Natick. That group may be pretty interested in this presentation, not so much the core Lyceum, but the building restoration efforts. I'll
Yeah.
make sure that they find out
That's
about
a good
this.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been really educational for us to learn about lyceums. I think a lot of us
Well, this is what
are
we're all about now, is just trying.
yeah, very, interested in some of the parallels with, as Pat was saying, what we try to do with some of our conversations here. But it's a very receptive theme, and we wish you well with your continuing efforts there.
Thank you, and I, by all the powers vested in me, you know, you're an honorary Lyceum. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you are in essence a Lyceum, right? However you want to define it, it was all about diffusion of useful information and learning and education and broadening your horizons. So you are, and I truly invite anybody that's reach out to me. We're trying to pull together this coalition of people that's vaguely historical, interested in the 200th anniversary of the Lyceum movement and what it stood for, and sort of just publicizing that on this anniversary in November. So if you're at all interested, reach out to me and we can get you connected with that group too.
That would be great. And speaking of dissemination of useful information, so just our usual two kind of end of session topics. First, upcoming speakers. So next week, I think a lot of people seem to be commenting on January seems to be this month that just would never end. Well, this is the last Monday. Next Monday begins February and Black History Month, and we'll have Deborah Mitchell coming with probably some of her friends to talk about what's going on in her life and with Black History Month celebrations. We've got open slots the remainder of the month, but all of March we'll be devoting to local candidate speakers. There's, two folks running uncontested for select board seats, three folks running for two school committee seats. Would definitely try to get all five of those folks. And I'd like, if possible, to also get uncontested candidate for Board of Health and the assessor's office, just because I think those are pretty interesting positions in town. As not so much the candidacy of those folks, but a little primer on what those positions do. And before I turn it over to Brinley for upcoming local events, I just want to note that Cindy has joined us. Cindy, you're going to find the recording super interesting, I think. So how's the snow up there in New Hampshire? Or
Well,
are you
I'm
back
actually
here?
in Natick. I
You
went
got
out, I
back.
have an appointment at 2 o'clock and I went out to shovel, totally lost track of time. Then went to get my battery charged, and then they wouldn't do it. And then I came back, and then I was stuck in the driveway, and I looked at the clock. It said 10:12, and I'm in the middle of the driveway. And so it took another 10 minutes to get out of there. But I'm so sorry.
Good to see you.
That's
I
all
look
right. It's
forward
been
to
a
seeing the
fantastic
recording.
conversation with Mark. You'll enjoy the
Good.
recording afterwards.
Good to see you, Cindy.
Yeah,
Bye.
before I give it to Brinley, Pat, do you have one more thing you
Yeah,
want to say?
a quick question for you, Mark. And maybe you've got it in your website. What did the Lyceum movement also have a uplifting or forward motion for the suffragette movement? The women's.
Yeah, well, I mentioned, I don't know if you were around when we were discussing Lucy Stone.
No, Pat joined a little bit later, so he
Yeah,
missed those first
Yeah.
slides. Yeah.
that she was first elected to the school committee.
Well, that's a different. Lucy Stone was the first woman from Massachusetts that got a college degree, but she also became a abolitionist speaker and then a really prominent suffragist that split with the.
Okay.
So Lucy Stone is a really, really fascinating woman. She's a suffrage and abolitionist woman.
Thank you.
Great. Brinley.
Pat, I did put a link to Lucy Stone in the chat if you go up and look through that.
Okay.
Great. And that'll be up on the YouTube part afterwards too. Brinley, what's going on locally other than snow shoveling?
Lots of that. I just want to say before I do that, this has been really wonderful. Such a great conversation. I'm so excited for what you guys are doing, and it feels especially important right now. Education just feels especially important, and so thank you for doing all that you're doing and coming to visit us today. It was great to have this.
That makes it worth it. Thank you.
So we have just a reminder. Shai Fuchsman came to speak to us a couple of weeks ago about the strategic plan for the school committee. And speaking of school committees, and I would just like to remind everyone that these 2 days are the strategic planning forums that were mentioned. So they were originally today, but they have moved what was today to Wednesday. So I put a link in the chat to remind people of these forums. And I actually really hope everyone could participate in at least one forum. There's one tomorrow at noon at the Community Senior Center. And then there's two online Zoom forums. Because I really do think that, well, you guys know this, I think school committee is a big deal, but I also think that the school budget is a big deal. It's, 65% of the town budget, varies between 65 and 70% of the town budget. So I think all of us being involved in the strategic plan moving forward and how they want to spend money and how they want to fix their buildings and what they want to do is an important part of the town. And so I really hope everyone is able to participate in some manner. And that's also a reminder that they will be doing surveys and the surveys will come out. So please stay tuned to the page that I posted in there so that when the surveys come out, you can answer them, because that doesn't take anything but your own time on your own time to answer them.
Great.
Hold on. Let me look at the calendar, see if I had anything else. For enthusiasts, Robert Burns Day is Sunday.
Oh boy.
So, and then the next school committee meeting is next Monday, and then the next, just so people can have it on their calendar, the big budget meeting between school committee and select board, the joint meeting, and the next Johnson Speaks meeting is Wednesday, February 4th, just in case people want to put that on their calendar in case they want to go and be a part of it.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Brinley. Well, this seems like an appropriate time to close. Wish everybody well with any remaining snow cleanup. We were super excited to see that our neighbors across the street came and used their snowblower for our plow pile, completely unasked for. So that's going to make our work lighter. But enjoy the snow, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Take
Yeah.
care,
Thank you,
all.
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.